session on understanding QR codes and other interactive technologies. Today we're going to talk about QR codes. My name is Mike Ruff and I'm the Chief Technology Officer of NASDAR Incorporated. I am actually involved with the consulting group, NASDAR Consulting Services. Our consulting group is involved with calibration and training and making our customers more profitable. NASDAR sells screen ink, digital ink, and digital media. But today we're here to learn about QR codes, and QR codes are one of the most talked about technologies of our industry right now. I was in the Graph Expo at Chicago this fall, and it's hitting the big time in the offset industry, and I know you guys, from the look of this crowd here, I know you guys are seeing it come to pass. And what you need to understand about this is how it has the potential to transfer static 2D advertising into interactive displays, and this technology is just beginning, so you can be on the front end of this technology. So in this session here today, we're going to explore this: basically what QR codes are and other related technologies to that, how they work, and how they can help your clients interact with their marketing. So today we're going to have a presentation by Jason Pinto. He's the CMO of interlinkONE. And Jason has been responsible for creating and launching multimedia for his company. He has years of experience working with marketers, printers, ad agencies, and he's been building and executing lead-generating campaigns and customer satisfaction and other one-on-one initiatives across multimedia formats. At this time, I just want to introduce Jason Pinto from interlinkONE. Let's give him a hand.
Thank you very much, Mike. I want to thank first the Signage and Graphics Summit for having me here, all of you guys for attending. So I'm certainly happy to be here in Tampa at the end of January. I'm very nervous, though, after following Eric Hallman's presentation. So I'm guessing all of you guys were in there. One of the greatest things to me about social media is about maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when a speaker would come up here and start giving a presentation, they'd ask everyone to shut their phones off. I'm going to be talking, I want to be distracted. But it's the complete opposite now, right? I want you to have your iPhone on. I want you to have your iPad on. I want you to be hopefully tweeting some of the things I'm saying, hopefully in a good way. And if it's in a bad way, then heck, that's what social media is. It's honesty. And just like his video showed how, over time, the great increase. The subject I'm going to talk about today, QR codes, hopefully I'll show you some examples that it absolutely can help make print interactive. It's a subject that I'm pretty passionate about. In fact, maybe a little too passionate about. For the past couple of years, I've been talking about it with my friends, my family, workmates, my wife. And the thing that probably pushed them over the edge is when I started going to bars and restaurants wearing my I Love QR Codes t-shirt. But the best thing is that if you were to scan this QR code after maybe I ironed the shirt once or twice, it would work. It would direct you to, I think it's our YouTube channel right now. And so we're going to show examples like that. I won't, not too much into myself, right? So my last name is Pinto. And when I was in middle school, I hated it. Right? My kids would always have a story about their uncle used to have one of those cars, or the horse, or the beans, right? But now, here I am, a little bit older, and I've got it on one of my introduction slides, so I've come to embrace it. But that same feeling that I used to have, that my last name was Pinto, is the feeling that a lot of us in the print industry have. Right? I want to keep this on for more than a couple seconds. We know that the shift is happening, right? People might not read as many newspapers as they used to, magazine subscriptions, but marketers are still spending money. It's just maybe they've adjusted some of the different channels. So this one These charts are from the Direct Marketing Association, a fact book that they put out a couple months ago, right? The growth, the ones we probably expect, online, video, social, and then huge, mobile. And so is the smartphone the thing that's killing everybody? If you have one, you probably love it. But at the same time, you would acknowledge that it's changing the way people consume information. And so is it a bad thing or is it a good thing? And so hopefully what I can show you about QR codes is how they can actually marry these things that still exist, right? Newspapers, signs, printed advertisements. And the QR code can connect the smartphone to the printed materials that people still need and that they still respond to. So as we go into the presentation, all I'm going to ask is, I'm not going to promise that just putting a QR code on a billboard or a sign is going to increase response rate by 4,000% every time, right? It's not going to make everyone scan it, but it absolutely can take advantage of the fact that a lot of people have smartphones. So as we step into the journey, the first thing is, I just want to talk about what a QR code is, right? Is it just an ugly square? It's a barcode, right? But huge, I think the huge thing to understand, just basic, right? QR stands for quick response. And so we all know, right, those YouTube videos, right, that Eric Qualman showed in his presentation. If you were to go to YouTube maybe and get the full address of that video, it'd be youtube.com/watch?70538, right? Maybe 15, 20 characters. You could give that to someone maybe over the phone or write it down. Well, QR codes, what you could do is take that address, make a QR code, and as soon as someone scans that code, boom, they're watching the video right on their phone. And so if you think about that in regards to how you might sell those to your clients, they allow people to see your sign, your billboard, your print ad, and then quickly respond to either to shop on their phone or to fill out a contact us form. It's just a way for them to quickly get information. Because Lord knows how busy we all are nowadays, right? So how much time are we really going to ask of our prospect or consumer in regards to how they're going to get that information? The other thing about QR codes, they're not brand spanking new. They've been around since 1994. And if you think about how long ago that was, I just looked up a couple of quick stats. I'm a big music guy, so this is kind of embarrassing, but right back then, bands like Boys to Men or Crisscross were super popular, right? A gallon of gas cost $1.04 on average in 1994. And so long, long time ago, hopefully we'll go back there in some aspects, but I think what that helps to show is it's not just a new technology that someone just invented in their garage last year. They've been around for whatever that is, 17 years, and they weren't just invented by a couple of marketers. But Denso Wave, real quick background, they were primarily involved in creating parts for automobiles, right? So if you think about the manufacturing of parts, someone scanning a part and be able to get maybe the manual or more information, but also in shipping and receiving, they would put QR codes on the manual so that the truck driver could scan the code to say that he's got it, or when it got delivered to the next stop. So very practical uses. The bottom line, though, is that just proves it's been around for a while, and it's not just a fluffy thing that marketers want everyone to use. And then the last thing, just to keep in mind, what makes it different than the normal barcode is it's two-dimensional, which means it can hold a lot more data. So that crazy number, 4,296 alphanumeric characters, that's how much it could hold in that square, right? Which is crazy, I think, when you think about it. But even though it can hold that many, I promise that if you create QR codes for yourselves or for clients, you're never going to use that many. Primarily, the best examples of QR codes or the best applications are having to go to a website, which is 15 characters, or a YouTube video, or your company's Facebook page, or something along that line. So, but even though, it can hold a lot more if you wanted to use it for that way, but that's just basically what makes it more powerful than a normal barcode. Has anyone ever made a QR code in this room? Okay, cool, that's a pretty good number. There's no fancy magic. You could Google it right now and find 1,000 free QR code readers. And then this one, this is a screenshot of one application. Whatever your company website is, or your Facebook page, or a mobile page, you get the address, you input it, you say maybe if you want to track the scans, you hit get your code, and then those applications will output the QR code. And all it is, it's just an image, right? So whatever application you use, they should be outputting a high-res image. In this example, it's a 300 DPI PNG file, right? So you can take that image, give it to your designer, they can incorporate it into the sign, the billboard, they can stretch it, they can customize it a little bit, and I'll show some examples of that. There's a couple other things that you can do with a QR code. It could go to a website. You probably can't see it, but also another option I see is for business cards. So on my business card, which hopefully you guys are all going to want to steal later this week, on the front, this QR code actually resolves to my contact information. So if we're hanging out at dinner tonight, we've got maybe a drink in one hand, our phone in the other, you could scan this QR code and it would bring up my contact details, and hopefully all you need to do is hit add to my contacts, a little button, and you'll have my name, address, phone, whatever I put in there. And so just like a V card for email, QR codes can do the same thing. It's just called a Me card. So that's, besides web, that might be another way that you would use QR codes. How to scan them. That's the hugest thing, right? If they're easy to create, what's the other shoe? And it's how to scan them. And the bottom line is this. People need a smartphone to scan the codes. It's got to be maybe an iPhone or a BlackBerry, a Droid, Samsung. You can see some of the other ones up there. And I know not everyone has a smartphone yet, but actually maybe by a show of hands, how many people in here have a smartphone? Holy crap, that's incredible. So I know not every consumer, every prospect has one yet, but I'm sure you'd all agree that your friends, your family, more of them have a smartphone today than they did last year. I'm seeing it no matter where they work, construction, if they have their own business, if they're a teacher. Smartphones make life easier for communicating, for doing business, for learning things. And so I don't think that should be a thing to scare you away from using QR codes. There's some stats out there that talk about maybe 35% of the market has QR code, has smartphones in the US now. Forrester published a report that said half of us will have one by the end of next year. They're everywhere, I think, is the bottom line. And so putting one on a sign, the chances are that part of your audience will be able to interact with them. It's not just having the phone, of course, right? Because if you just took out your iPhone and went to camera, that's not going to work. So you do need an application to scan the code. And I know sometimes this causes maybe a little bit of hedging or some headaches. What app do I use? I'm not trying to sell on any of these, but if you have an iPhone, there's tons of free apps. My favorite one, the one that hardly ever lets me down, is iNigma. And I'm pretty sure there's a free version in the iPhone App Store. Maybe it's $1. But if you're going to be demoing QR codes or trying to use them, that's from experience, that's the best one on the iPhone. If you have a Droid, or one beautiful thing about smartphones is so many of them now run on Android, the platform. There's an app called the barcode scanner, and I know that one is free, and that one runs pretty much perfectly every time. And so the barcode scanner for the Android platform, and for a BlackBerry, that's probably the one where we see the most difficulty, but there's an app called the BlackBerry Messenger. It's a free app for BlackBerries. Most of my friends use it for text messaging, right? But it has an option to scan a code on BlackBerry Messenger. And I promise that's the one that works the best from what we've seen from our customers in meetings at other conferences. So depending on what phone you have, I hope one of those works for you. Certainly if you see me later and you're having trouble, hopefully I can help. But you're going to want to be prepared with that information, I think, when you try to sell these, or maybe when you put a printout up, to maybe give some suggestions as to what app people would need. Of course, what could change the whole game and make it easier for everybody is if they start installing those apps on phones. And we hear rumors that's going to happen maybe, but obviously you don't know. But either way, if you've got a smartphone, I'm sure we've all gone to the App Store and downloaded an app. So I don't think that process is too cumbersome for most people to handle. And then basically, just if you never scanned a QR code, right? So you get your smartphone, you click to your app, you hold it in front of the QR code, and most of the good apps will detect the code automatically, buzz, and then show you either the website or the contact info. And so I think this chart, or this little image, is just an easy way to show how the whole process works, from the code to somebody's website in the end. So, not to go back to Eric Coleman, but I felt a little offended when he called QR codes ugly, right? But I know it's just a black and white square. That's how we primarily see them. But I want to go into a few of the options in regards to if you guys are the designers or if you have designers and you come to them and say, we've got to put a QR code on this sign, and maybe they throw up in their mouth a little bit, you're going to ruin my beautiful design. Well, they do have some creative options. So, first, we'll start with just a basic. They can be simple or complex. And so here's the thing, right? So if you look at the difference, this one has a whole lot more going on in it than that one. And so it comes down to how much data you put in the code. The less data, the better. Because if someone's got their phone, maybe it's not too bright outside. If there's less data in the code, that increases the chances that people will be able to scan it successfully. So, what does that mean for you? Maybe you have a customer that wants to put up a billboard and they want people to scan the code and go to MapQuest on their phone and have directions from where they are at that point to their store. If we go to MapQuest and you typed in their address, and I'm pretty sure I was nice to them and I trimmed down even the address, right? It's going to be huge. It's going to have the city, the address, zip code, latitude, longitude, right? So if you were to make a QR code with that full URL, code's going to be pretty dense. But an easy solution is to just shorten the URL. So that address can be shortened to something like this, whatever that is, 12 characters. And then this code is a whole lot cleaner than this one here. So to shorten a URL, some of the applications that you might use to make a QR code will do it automatically for you. One, because it's good for you, and two, because it should help them track it. But even if you want to do it on your own, Google has a little tool that lets people shorten URLs, Bitly, right? So anyone who uses social media, you might be familiar with those tools. So you can do the same thing. Grab the ugly, big URL, shorten it, and then make your QR code. In the end, people will still get to the place, the same destination. They'll still go to MapQuest when they hit the button, but it's going to increase the chances that people can scan it successfully. All right, now I don't know if anybody is a big pet lover, but here's an example of not every pixel in the QR code is critical, right? So if you think about your, I don't know how long these will still be around, right? But DVDs, right, or CDs, right? If they get scratched or a little dirty, up to a point, they'll still play successfully for you. And it's called the Reed-Solomon Error Correction Code. And the QR codes have the same error correction built in it. So in most cases, up to 30% of the QR code can be dirty or gone and it will still scan successfully. So from a design point of view, you can start doing things like this. You can put, if you're doing a sign maybe for a vet, an animal hospital, you can take an image and put it on top, really cover those pixels, and it'll still work. The key is leaving those three main squares, right? If you hide those, you're going to be in trouble most likely. But with a lot of the other pixels inside the QR code, you can kind of hide them or remove them and still have the code work, but maybe give the branding or the creative freedom that your customer or your designer wanted. This other example, right? Not that I want to brag, but because I'm in the Northeast, I won't have to push a lawnmower around for a long time. Of course, right, we're doing the whole snow shovels thing now, but this example, most of you that have a lawnmower, next time you look at it, you might recognize, the logo on the engine might be Briggs and Stratton, right? They're a pretty huge company. They've got a huge implant printer. They've started to use QR codes. And the reason I want to show that example is because they are a big name, but what they've done is they've plopped their logo right in the middle of the QR code. And I think this is a pretty cool thing that most companies can do if you want to start showing them off, right? So because you can put it in the middle, you can put it up top, bottom, side to side, but I think that helps to maybe reinforce who you are as a company and show your branding. They don't have to be black and white. QR codes can be created in color. I know most of the ones that we see out there are black and white. And that's because those are probably going to work almost all the time. But you can choose different color combinations. The key, though, is the contrast. So I know I'm not an expert at Photoshop or InDesign, but if you make a QR code and you want to try it with the colors, just have your designer, they can try different schemes. They can be 2 colors, they can be multiple colors, and they can still scan successfully up to a point. So the whole key, though, is try to be creative, but just make sure you test it, right? Don't print it before you test it with your iPhone or your Droid. Here's an example of one. Is there anyone else from the Boston area out here? All right, cool. So I promise you, if the Celtics win the championship this year, all you gotta do is email me, and I will send you a t-shirt that we're making with these QR codes on it. Celtics, we can wear them around, show pride in our team, and show that we also are into QR codes and how to make things interactive. And so there's 2 things about this QR code. Not only do we have a colorful logo in the middle, multiple colors, we changed the color of the QR code, so kind of like the orange, the basketball, but also we tried to use a pattern, right? So that pattern is kind of make it look like a basketball. And if you're wondering how to do it, your designer might be able to, we have a blog where we published a few different examples, step-by-steps, how she did it. So she went into Photoshop with the beginning image, and then she went down and changed the pattern, put in the logo. And so she talks about the pains and then what she had to do to test it. So now for you guys, the color, we talked about the logo, the size, right? The size of a QR code. People are putting them on buildings. People are putting them on billboards. So here's an example of the movie 28 Weeks Later, which I did not see, but I know I heard some buzz about it. And so you can see this huge QR code that Clear Channel put on one of their billboards. And so the rule of thumb that most often I hear is it's like a 10-to-1 ratio. So if someone's going to be about 60 feet away from the QR code, you want it to be maybe 6 feet by 6 feet. And so if you think about that ratio, and then if you can find ways to maybe test inside your warehouse or your building or whatever you have, but that seems to pretty much be the standard, 10-to-1. And so certainly on a business card, it can be this small because you're going to be up close and personal with it. But certainly from a billboard or on a sign, you want people to be able to see the code, obviously, and then be able to still hold their phone up and scan it. One of the best things that's happening in that regard, though, is the cameras on our phones are getting better. So if you've gone from the iPhone 3 to maybe the iPhone 4, one of my favorite new features is the autofocus. So you can actually see it. You hold up your camera, it'll try to autofocus, find the QR code, and then scan it successfully. So my point is that as because the phones are getting better, that's going to help us as printers and as marketers. Oops. Sorry about that. I got a little excited about that one. Let me just go back to my slide. Has anyone put a QR code on a billboard or anything yet? You might have seen an example that got a lot of buzz online. A printer in New York, I think his name is Val DiGiacinto. He does a lot of webinars and things like that. He did a campaign for Calvin Klein where they hung a huge, I want to say 12 foot by 12 foot banner with a red and white QR code for Calvin Klein. And there's so many pictures online of people. It was New York City, right? So he was kind of lucky there. But you could see people standing on the side of the street, across the block, scanning this QR code. And so if you think you want to do a little presentation to your clients about what you could do to help them, search for that Calvin Klein QR code campaign, because I think the pictures might help push them over the edge, because they see people waiting to cross the street or standing outside the parking lot, seeing that big banner, the big billboard. And I think in that case too, if you scanned it, it went to videos of maybe different Calvin Klein models or maybe new products, whatever the case might be. So I think that example is one that might help you out in the sales process. Of course too, they can be small. So I know this is the Signage and Graphics Summit, but I wanted to share it. If you're going to make a small one, just from our own testing, it's 3/4 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch is the smallest that we go and still feel comfortable that most people will be able to scan it successfully. And so you might go down to that size when you put on a business card. If anyone prints maybe brochures or fact sheets for your company, if you're going to put a QR code on those, 3/4 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch is pretty solid, pretty safe for someone to scan successfully from up close. So now we're just going to go into just a few maybe case studies and inspiration, and some of them I've got little stories behind, others I'll just kind of show you, and all of these should be on the presentation that they put on your badge. So if you want to use them for your sales, feel free. This one was at a mall in Maryland, right? So you can see this one was a pretty big sign that they made. They hung over the mall this holiday season for a jewelry store. 15 days and 15 deals. And so basically people could scan that QR code. It took them to a special website for the jeweler. And then from there they'd see it's Monday. Okay, here's the deal for that day. One thing to know about this one though is, let's say you went on Monday, you scanned, and you knew that your significant other wasn't going to go for that piece of jewelry. You don't have to return to the store on Tuesday to scan the code again. On your apps, it should save history of what you've scanned. And so they could click on their phone on Tuesday, hit the URL, and then find out what the new deal is. So if you think about one selling point for QR codes, if someone's going to scan your sign or your billboard, they could get the URL. They don't have to go to the video or the website at that point, right? So if they're driving or ahead of their car, that's not the safest thing. So people can scan the code and then go to that URL whenever they want to. And so that's just a little point to help sell. I know we're going to be getting close to lunchtime, so you might hate me for showing an example of a little butcher shop, but this is one of the most popular butcher shops in my area in Massachusetts, right? So if you try to go around 11 or noon each day, it's crazy. It's almost, it's worth it, but it's tough. And so what they did is, this is a small QR code, just one of their examples, on the cash register. They put a QR code right there. So after you've waited throughout the line, you're paying or you're waiting for your credit card to come back, people could scan the QR code, and in this case, it took them to a site where they could subscribe for the daily email from this butcher shop. And it's worked, right? When I first heard that they were going to use it, I thought, a butcher shop, I mean, people are going in and out to get their meat. But every day, ever since they put one, we've seen scans and we've seen people get added to their newsletter. So your customers want people to be on their newsletter or to sign up for alerts. This is one way that you can help them build their database with QR codes. So if they've got a sign-up form and it looks okay in a phone, maybe creating a QR code will help build their list. Another thing that they've done is, right, it's a busy butcher shop. They've put QR codes on signs around the store. So when you're nervous and you're walking around the shop waiting for your meat, you know, everyone's playing with their phone nowadays. You can scan the QR code, and then it takes them to a video about the butcher shop or sign-ups for other courses that butcher shop offers. So if you've got a captive audience and you've got printed materials, I think QR codes can help interact with those people while they're sitting there just waiting for something from your shop or from your customers. Real estate. Realtors are some of the best marketers that most of us know. Anyone who's ever bought a house or in a condo or whatever, I'm sure your realtor's in your face every month or so. They probably send you a calendar. They probably send you a thank you postcard, right? Because they want you to hopefully buy again or refer someone. And so we've seen, just from our experience, a lot of realtors start using these. And so if you print rider signs at all or anything with realtors, hopefully QR codes are something that they might get excited about. Here's an example. This is a house in Wilmington, Massachusetts, right? So she has her flip camera, which Eric talked about too. She made a little virtual tour of the house. People that pull up, they see the sign. She still has her phone number, her website address, but there's a QR code. If someone scans that QR code, they actually see the virtual tour of that house right outside. So it absolutely can make the sign interactive. Think about when she's busy, right? If she can't be at the house every hour for someone who wants to see a tour, that QR code is an easy way to help her reach potential customers. And so for real estate, we're seeing them on flyers, mailers, but certainly for you guys, if you are involved in printing those riders or those signs at all, I think QR codes can maybe be a value add.
So you got to figure the average consumer is not tech savvy, and she went to the trouble of explaining where to go and how to get the QR code reader, but most people, a lot of your applications don't show that instruction. So how long is it going to take before the average consumer knows how to? Okay,
so first let me just highlight what David said, right? This is an awesome example, because you might learn this the hard way. You might be excited, you print a QR code and a sign, you might not have no instructions, right? So what she's done, and what other companies have done, is she kind of shows what you do. She showed a picture of a smartphone that showed kind of like a YouTube video in the middle, and then she put some instructions. Scan this QR code with your smartphone to learn more. To download a reader, go to your app store. I know that adds a bit of text and a picture to the sign, but heck, I guarantee that's going to help, especially right now. So I don't know when everyone's going to see a QR code and know exactly what to do with it, but the more mainstream examples that do it, right? So Best Buy, they put them in their weekly flyers. Sears had one on their stinking TV commercial a few weeks ago. As those things keep happening, it's obviously going to push them to mainstream. And of course, if everyone starts wearing I Love QR Code t-shirts, that's not going to hurt either. So if you want some of those, just let me know. But I'm glad you pointed it out, David, because I think that's a great example. Provide that little bit of education, show someone from the phone to the QR code, you'll get something good, and hopefully that'll help them increase the chance of scanning. A few more examples. I am a rock and roll superstar at heart, so I love seeing examples like this. This was a magazine ad, but then I also saw a blown up version at Guitar Center one day. And so here they're trying to sell their Laguna guitars, and so they put a QR code. And if you scan, right, the print ad, right, maybe you see the picture and maybe you know that you want that guitar. Someone else, though, might need more evidence. And so what they did is that QR code took someone to videos of someone jamming on the guitar, playing the pedals, and that way they can actually experience, maybe in the store, how cool that guitar would be for them. So video marketing is going to keep going up. I think QR codes are a great way to capitalize on that, to make a product come alive for someone, whether it's in the store or whether it's looking at the sign or the billboard. This one is just outside in Boston, kind of near Fenway Park, but this is actually a printer made this, right? So they're trying to get their passerbys to buy print from them. And so they made this sign. I think maybe it's 5 feet tall, maybe 3 feet wide. And so they did a kind of a little game. Are you curious? QR codes take you from print to the web. Scan the code. It's easy to do. And so I think the inspiration on this example is, if you're going to try to sell QR codes, you better put them on your printed materials. That's going to help people know what they are. They're going to maybe ask, what the heck is this black and white square on your front door or on your brochure or your business card? So this is a pretty small print shop in Boston, but they've got great real estate and they're taking advantage of it. So maybe just a little thing like that you could print for yourself might help increase awareness. Dinosaurs, right? This is one that got me excited because this happened at Madison Square Garden. So they had this huge exhibit in the summer, walking with dinosaurs. So as people were walking through the halls at Madison Square Garden to the exhibit, A printer was fortunate enough to get that business. They printed those huge signs. They had multiple QR codes throughout. And so whether you were just passing by Madison Square Garden or you were headed to the exhibit or leaving, you could scan the QR codes and then access more information about the exhibit in the end. So I know theirs went to a page with videos, it had admission information, ticket prices, and so at the same time, I know the QR code on there, but the dinosaur still scares me, so it didn't really take away too much from the whole ad, I don't think, but really it did help make it interactive. This one is an example, right, because this shows mainstream starting to use it. Disney has started to use QR codes. So for any, I don't want to use the word geek or nerd, I mean, I'm in the computer industry, the movie Tron, right? A whole lot of hype came out about Tron over the past year, and then the movie just came out a couple of months ago. Disney produces these gift cards. You can get them at Disney World, you can get them at Disney stores, right? So how is this going to work? Well, on the back of the gift card, they put this QR code, right? So normally on the back, maybe, it's got all the information, how it's valid, but there's a chance that if you've got a gift card, you're probably going to look to see how long it's valid for. Well, then there's a QR code, and those QR codes actually take you to a trailer of that movie. And so I know they did it for Tron, and then I know they're making them for some of their other movies. And so maybe those movies are geared maybe to some younger generations, but in a lot of cases you're targeting them, or your consumers might be targeting those generations. So if you need an example of, boom, Disney's using it, hopefully this one helps a little bit.
Jason, can I ask a question?
Of course.
That falls far below your 3/4 by 3/4. So what kind of issues are you going to have with something like that?
All right, so 3/4 by 3/4 is what we recommend. That one on the Tron card was absolutely smaller, but it worked with an iPhone 4. With an iPhone 3, it didn't work. So when we saw it, we were like, wow, Disney messed up. But as some of those newer phones, the Droid and the iPhone 4 scanned it successfully in our office. So what that means is as the phones get better, the cameras get better, we will be able to make them a little bit smaller and work. But yeah, they're Disney, so they can probably do whatever they want. But 3/4 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch is what we recommend for testing. I know the iPhone 3 isn't that old, but certainly we'll be able to get smaller maybe as we go along. But thanks for catching that. Here's one. I don't know if you guys ever have open houses maybe. So this is a printer in Iowa. They were trying to show QR codes to people that came in. And so they took this theme. If you were a rock star, who would you be? So this huge sign when people walked in their print shop, scan the code to find out. And so if you scan this code, it went to a web page where they had one of their designers make a little bit of logic. And so it was random, right? So you might scan the code and it might say, hey, you're Jimi Hendrix, and it showed a big picture of him. And so I thought this was a really cool concept because it was kind of a game, it made it fun. I know their only awkward moment was when maybe a man scanned it and he got Sheryl Crow, or the reverse, right? So they didn't have a way to to make that foolproof. But not only did this help show off QR codes to their visitors, they've been printed different cards for all of the possible rock stars. So people scanned the QR code in the open house, then they grabbed, you are Mick Jagger, you are Steven Tyler, whatever. And so that way they showed how QR codes can work on the phone, but then also they had the printed element as well, which I thought was a nice tie-in. This was a great example. In Rochester, New York, they have a jazz festival each year. And so this was done by the Philipson Group in New York. And if you Google them, you'll read a lot about them and how they're using QR codes on signs. And so this one, I don't know how tall. I think the sign was 6 feet tall, maybe. And so I know at that music festival, they tested it, and from about 60 feet away, people were scanning the code successfully. And so it's great, right? So this was maybe a week-long festival, which you can see in the poster here, all the different acts, right? Well, the QR code allowed people to scan the code from 60 feet away or up close, and on their phone, they went to a mobile-optimized festival guide. And so that way, no matter how far away you walked from the main building, you could easily look on your phone for when the next band was playing or what the schedule was for the next couple of days. I know we want the people to grab the printed brochure, right, and have that festival guide in their hands. And hopefully they gave those away too. But what you could do is, even with that printed guide, you can't show a video of a band that's playing on Tuesday. So what you could do is maybe print the schedule and then maybe put QR codes that direct people, hey, go watch a video of this band who's performing next week, or whatever the case might be. So I think that was a nice way of maybe tying in print to the mobile side. This is just a little example. For whatever reason, in the makeup industry, people at our office are seeing these more and more. So this is at Sephora, which all the attendants are walking around with these little badge cards, scan me and watch our 5-minute makeover. So just a way to maybe capitalize on the videos that company has created. This one, I was so tempted to delete because of some recent events maybe, right? But paying by QR code. And I know that might not apply to you guys too much, but it does, I think, show what they can do. Starbucks messed around with this starting about a year ago, paying by QR code. What people could do is they'd have a QR code on their phone, go to the register would scan the QR code and it would automatically pay for that coffee. So the QR code was connected to their PayPal accounts and it deducted the money. Now, I just read maybe 2 weeks ago that Starbucks is going to be rolling this out to other places. And they're not actually using QR codes as they roll it out. They're using some other barcode format. But for whatever reason, they made that decision. But there's a lot of sites that are popping up that let people connect their PayPal or their debit card to a QR code and then be able to pay for something with that. And I really think that's going to be a space, mobile payments, that will get a lot of buzz over the next 6 months, next year. It's not all going to be from QR codes, but I do think, just from stuff I've read and seen, I think that you'll start seeing mobile payment as something that, not a buzz, but it's something that's going to be affecting printers and marketers and consumers. Certainly, this slide has a whole lot more impact when we're in somewhere like cold Boston, right? Right now, everyone's like, who cares about this slide? We have beautiful Tampa outside. But to promote this at Atlantis, right, on their posters, they put QR codes that directed people to a video that showed a whole tour of the facility. So I don't know who's going to win the race, but I feel like after this presentation, if we run down to whoever runs this resort and says, hey, we can make a video of this resort with a QR code and help promote the resort, maybe there's a little opportunity there with this example as inspiration. I hate this one because when I eat at McDonald's, I don't want to be reminded of how bad it is for me. But this actually is from, I think, in Japan, right, where QR codes have been huge for a while. Nutritional information. So for restaurants, if you think about it, if you want to put maybe a couple QR codes that show the nutritional information of some things. I like, for cookbooks, right, people, they see the picture, they see the recipe, well, you give them a QR code that goes to YouTube that shows the chef or the regular person actually putting that recipe together and making that. So if you've got any customers or prospects that print signs for the food industry, I think this is a decent example of how QR codes can connect people to relevant information. And then for discounts, right, for shopping, I don't know if anyone's ever bought anything on their mobile phone. If you haven't, though, I bet maybe in 6 months or a year, you might get a little bit more courageous and do it. And so here, Dick's Sporting Goods, they took out a huge digital sign, right? So where the Patriots play at Gillette Stadium, they've got, I can't even think of the word, not the billboard, but on the Jumbotron, right? So they ran this ad, snap a picture of this code and get an exclusive offer. So the Jumbotron at New England Stadium is pretty big, so people could be pretty decently far away, and they were able to scan those codes successfully. And then just in regards to design, mainstream, will QR codes be just a fad? I don't know if you saw this, the New York Times magazine. This was December. And when I saw this, I literally danced around the office because I know a lot of people still read the Times. And on the front of the magazine was this huge QR code. So I was thinking, boom, that's going to help push them to mainstream more. And they actually made the QR code out of balloons, which was very creative, I thought. and I was able to scan it successfully. So if you need maybe a mainstream source, if you want to go show someone, a big company that's using QR codes, the New York Times talked about them in this issue a little bit, and of course they had one on the cover. And I know that if you scan this code, it takes you to a site that shows how it was made, which was pretty cool because they literally put balloons together and they made a working QR code. This is maybe one for the sales toolbox for your reps. Will people scan? This was a case study that they put an ad in to win a free Dell. You could either go to the website or you could scan the QR code. Now this one, they publish stats for it, right? We all want stats when we have to go show a case study. Does something work? They mailed these to people. So you could think, well, they could just go run to their laptop and type in the URL. Well, in this case, 1/4 of the people actually scanned the QR code. And this ad actually ran, I believe it was more than a year ago, maybe 18 months ago. So no doubt, I think that the numbers would be higher for people that scanned it. And for people that didn't have a reader, they put some instructions, and 60% of the people that scanned it actually went to that site and learned how to download a reader. So I think if you talk to a customer and they're like, well, people won't know what to do, or will people read? You can find case studies like this that actually provide some stats and examples and things that they didn't do right as well. Just one I don't have a slide for, but we've run an ad in Canvas magazine. I don't know if anyone here gets that, right? So for about the past year, in the first month, I was psyched, put a big QR code, 3 scans, and probably one of them was my mom, which was a little embarrassing. But by June, we were getting more people scanning the QR code than they were typing in the URL, right? Because we tracked them differently. We tracked who scanned the QR code versus who typed in the URL. And so we've got some stories like that on our website where we were psyched to see that. Because if you think about it, if you're on the plane looking at your magazine or sitting at lunch, it probably is easier just to scan the QR code than to go to remember it or maybe turn on your laptop and type it in. So it's really that whole quick response thing. Just getting into the QR code game, so if you want to try it, you can Google for QR code readers. Here's an application for the company that I work with, createandtrack.com. And so basically it allows you to do a couple things. You can make QR codes one at a time with your website, or you can make them in bulk. So I don't know if that would apply to your industry too much, but if you're a direct mailer maybe, and you're going to send out a mail to 5,000 people, you can actually make personalized QR codes. So you can upload a list of the different people, and then the system will create them in bulk too. So if there's any application for creating items in bulk, tools like ours have that capability. And I'm mad at myself for not even talking about this to the very end, right? Because creating QR code is one thing, but if you can actually show data and results to your customer, that's huge. And so if you create a QR code that goes to your customer's website, you're not going to know the person's phone number, you're not going to know their name, right, just by them scanning it. So what you will be able to though show is you'll know how many people have scanned it, right? So tool reports, some of the basic reports that you should be able to get and show them across different days of the week when people have scanned the code. Different hours, right? So when's your stuff more popular? You can also tell what kind of phone someone scanned it on. You know their IP address, which basically means that you can give a general idea as to where someone was when they scanned the code. So really like which city they were in. So if they put maybe, if they have a new product, right, and they put signs in 12 different supermarkets across the country, they can actually see, okay, the one in New York is getting the most scans. The one in Kansas isn't, right? So maybe that helps them see, okay, maybe New York's a better market, maybe we use more QR codes on our printed materials there. Or maybe Kansas, we try to do something else fun, or whatever the case might be. So you can measure the effectiveness of one sign versus another, one billboard versus another, one magazine ad versus another. And if your customer's into marketing and ROI, hopefully those are selling points that would bring value to them from you. And then the other thing, of course, I'm not here just to say like, go QR code is the only thing you should put on a sign. We're all about using multiple channels, right? So being able to measure maybe the QR code versus the regular URL. If you print a sign with a QR code, definitely try to track it separately versus who typed it in. Because if you get those numbers, that's got to help you, good or bad, in the end. So use them to promote social media sites, videos, whatever the case might be. How much do they cost? You can create QR codes for free in a lot of cases, but in those cases you really can't track them. They're just people letting you make them. So this site here, qrconnect.com, is one of the applications that lets you do it. And especially if you're new to it and you're not sure if it's going to work, for $19 a month, they let you make up to 5,000 QR codes per month. And so if you want to try it and track them and get the reports, I think that's a decent investment. And I know this one you can cancel at any time. But then my last thing on QR codes, right? So eggnog is a humongous weakness for me. And so I like to, right, I'm so glad it's only out during the holiday season for those 2 months, because I go wild for those 2 months. And the problem is, the more eggnog I drink, the tighter this suit gets, and the more death stares I get from my wife and things like that, right? So if you think about eggnog, right, so it makes things wider, it makes things bigger than maybe they should be. Well, if you make a QR code and you point it to your regular website might have a lot of pictures, whatever else it has. How much can actually fit in just those few inches, right? So if someone scans the QR code, that's a win. But then if they get to your site and maybe it has flash videos and they can't play it, or they have to scroll over for 6 miles, or whatever the case might be, that could give them a bad experience, not only using your site, but maybe of QR codes or your company in general. So the biggest thing I'll say is it's easy to create QR codes. You can track them pretty inexpensively, but you definitely want to try at all possible to drive them to a site that will, I'm going to say, mobile optimized. So a site that's going to look good on a phone. And so that's just something to pay attention to. I don't want to scare you away from making QR codes that go to your site right away. Feel free to do it and test it and show it to people. But mobile optimized sites, using that is a big win for when you talk to your customers. Because if you can drive them to a site that fits good on the phone, that has the really important simplified information, that's going to create a better experience for the guy that's in your store, that took out their phone and scanned it, or that did it on a billboard. If they put in that effort, you want to reward them. And driving them to mobile optimized sites, I think, is a huge critical point in regards to the success of QR codes, in regards to smartphones on the web, and in regards to really the whole mix in general. So if you search for that, you will find some sites and tools that let you create mobile optimized sites. But it's just something to keep in mind if you talk to clients about possibly doing it. So just a few resources. Create and Track is the product. I gave you that qrconnect.com address. It actually goes to the same couple of places. I love social media, and so I'm always posting case studies. Whenever we see a QR code, we take a picture, we write a little story about it. So whether you're on Twitter and or Facebook, twitter.com/createandtrack and facebook.com/createandtrack. So on those sites, we're posting new examples every week. On the main site, there's a lot of videos. Some of the videos have me, which I apologize for, but there's other people in our office who make videos. So if you need a video example to show to someone, here's what a QR code does, here's how it works, you can steal those. Or even better, make your own, right? Make a QR code, film yourself scanning it, and show how it works. Then there's my details if you ever want to connect with me, but I'll be here the rest of the week. And thank you guys very much for listening to me and for being here.